Opal Pierce stopped in the hallway when she heard Vanessa's voice. She had only been walking to the kitchen to make another cup of tea. But the moment she heard her daughter-in-law speaking in a low voice, she slowed down. Something about the conversation felt different. Vanessa was usually cheerful when she visited. She would talk about the children, ask about Opal's health, and offer to help with small things around the house. But this voice was not cheerful. It was careful. Almost worried. Opal stood quietly near the doorway. She did not want to listen. She knew some conversations were private. But then Vanessa said something that made her stop. "I know you're waiting." A pause. "I just need more time." Opal looked toward the kitchen. She could not see who Vanessa was speaking with. She could only hear her daughter-in-law's side of the conversation. "No, don't do anything yet." Another pause. "I said I would handle it." Opal's hand tightened slightly around her teacup. Handle what? She had no idea. But those words stayed in her mind. Because for the first time in weeks, she wondered if something was happening around her that she was not supposed to know about. Opal quietly stepped away. She did not confront Vanessa. Not yet. At 69 years old, Opal had learned something important. Not every question needed an immediate answer. Sometimes, the truth revealed itself when you gave people enough time to show you who they really were. And a few weeks earlier, Opal would have never imagined that she would need to question the kindness of her own family. Because just a short time before that phone call, Vanessa had seemed like a completely different person. She had started calling more often. She had begun asking about Opal's meals, her health, and how she was spending her days. She brought groceries without being asked. She offered to help with things around the house. She even started making suggestions about how Opal's life could become easier. At first, Opal felt grateful. After years of a polite but distant relationship, she thought maybe things were finally changing. Maybe Vanessa was trying to become closer. Maybe she was finally seeing Opal not just as her husband's mother, but as family. That thought had warmed Opal's heart. She had spent so many years taking care of everyone else. Maybe now, someone wanted to take care of her. But standing in that hallway, hearing Vanessa's worried voice, Opal felt a small doubt appear. It was not enough to accuse anyone. It was not enough to assume the worst. But it was enough to make her pay closer attention. Because sometimes, the biggest changes in a family do not begin with an argument. They begin quietly. With a few unusual words. With a few decisions made without asking. And with the feeling that something has already started before you even knew it existed. For the next few days, Opal Pierce tried not to think too much about the phone call. She told herself there could be a simple explanation. After all, families had private conversations all the time. People made plans. People worried about things. That did not automatically mean something was wrong. So Opal did what she had always done. She gave people the benefit of the doubt. Especially family. A few weeks earlier, before that strange evening in the kitchen, Vanessa had started appearing in Opal's life in a way that felt almost surprising. The change was small at first. A phone call in the morning. A message asking if Opal had eaten lunch. A visit with a bag of groceries and a smile. "Mom, you shouldn't be carrying these heavy things anymore," Vanessa would say. Opal appreciated the kindness. At her age, she understood that life changed. Children grew older. Families became busier. People moved in different directions. So when Vanessa suddenly began showing more interest, Opal wanted to believe it came from a good place. Maybe Vanessa had finally realized that they could have a warmer relationship. Maybe she wanted to create the kind of family connection Opal had always hoped for. Vanessa's kindness was real. At least, that was what Opal wanted to believe. But there was one small thing she noticed. Whenever Vanessa talked about helping, she rarely said, "What would make you happy?" Instead, she often said, "What would make things easier?" At the time, Opal did not think much about it. But later, those words would come back to her. There were little moments that stayed in Opal's mind. Small things. Easy to ignore. At least at first. One afternoon, Vanessa walked into the kitchen and looked around. She glanced at the refrigerator. Then at the cabinets. Then at the small table near the window. "You know, Mom," Vanessa said, "this kitchen could be much easier for you." Opal smiled. "I've managed just fine for many years." Vanessa laughed softly. "I know you have. But sometimes we have to think ahead." The words sounded caring. But something about them felt unusual. Opal noticed Vanessa was not asking what she wanted. She was explaining what Opal needed. A few days later, Vanessa mentioned finding a local activity group that helped older adults stay connected. "I already looked into it," Vanessa said. "They have wonderful programs. I think you would really enjoy it." Opal appreciated the thought. But she was surprised by one detail. Vanessa had already gathered the information. She had already researched the schedule. She had already decided it was the right choice. Again, it was a small thing. Nothing serious. Nothing that Opal could point to and say, "This is wrong." And that was what made it confusing. Because every action looked like kindness. Every suggestion sounded thoughtful. But slowly, Opal began noticing a pattern. Vanessa was not just offering help. She was beginning to organize Opal's life. One decision at a time. One suggestion at a time. One little change after another. And without realizing it, Opal was starting to feel something she had not felt in years. A small voice inside her was asking a question she did not want to ask. Was Vanessa trying to make life easier for her? Or was someone else deciding what Opal's life should look like? At first, Opal Pierce told herself she was simply adjusting to a new kind of attention. After all, Vanessa was not doing anything obviously wrong. She was helping. At least, that was how it looked on the surface. But over the next several days, Opal began noticing something she could not ignore. Vanessa rarely asked questions anymore. She made announcements. One Saturday morning, Vanessa arrived with a small notebook in her hand. Opal smiled when she saw her. "I didn't know you were coming over today." Vanessa walked into the kitchen and placed the notebook on the counter. "I wanted to go over a few things with you." Opal looked curious. "Things?" Vanessa nodded. "Just little changes that will make everything easier." That word stayed with Opal. Everything. Vanessa opened the notebook. She had written down ideas. Meals. Schedules. Appointments. Activities. Things Opal had never asked for. "I think you should have a more organized routine," Vanessa said. "It will be better for you." Opal listened quietly. She appreciated the effort. She really did. But she also felt something she could not explain. It was as if her own life had become a project someone else was managing. A few days later, Vanessa arrived with another surprise. A new kitchen appliance. "I thought this would help you," Vanessa said. "The old one is probably becoming too difficult to use." Opal looked at it. It was a thoughtful gift. A kind gesture. But then she noticed something. Vanessa had already arranged where it would go. She had already decided what would be moved. She had already made space. Opal stood there for a moment. "Vanessa, I appreciate this. But you could have asked me first." Vanessa looked surprised. "Mom, I was only trying to help." The answer was gentle. Almost hurt. And that made Opal feel guilty for even saying anything. Maybe she was being too sensitive. Maybe she was making a bigger issue out of a small thing. That evening, Opal sat alone near the window and thought about it. She remembered how happy she had felt when Vanessa first started showing more care. She remembered thinking, maybe we are finally becoming closer. But now, she wondered if closeness meant something different to Vanessa. Because there was a difference between someone walking beside you and someone quietly taking the steering wheel. The next morning, Vanessa called again. Her voice sounded cheerful. She told Opal about a local group she had found. They have activities, social events, and people who visit members at home sometimes. Opal smiled politely. That sounds nice. I already signed you up, Vanessa replied. Opal paused. For a moment, she did not know what to say. You sign me up? Vanessa laughed softly. Yes. I knew you would like it. After the call ended, Opal sat quietly with the phone in her hand. She was grateful that someone cared. But another thought slowly entered her mind. When did caring stop being an offer? And start becoming a decision made for her? Opal Pierce began paying closer attention. Not because she wanted to find something wrong. Not because she wanted to believe Vanessa had bad intentions. But because she had learned something after many years of life. Sometimes, the biggest changes do not happen through one dramatic moment. They happen through small decisions. One after another. And before you realize it, your own choices are no longer completely your own. A few days later, Vanessa came over with another idea. This time, it was about Opal's daily routine. Mom, I found a wonderful health program, Vanessa said while placing her phone on the table. They can help people your age stay active and healthy. Opal smiled. I appreciate you looking into that. Vanessa nodded. I already made some arrangements. They can start with a consultation next month. Opal looked up. Wait. You already scheduled it? Vanessa seemed surprised by the question. Yes. I thought it would save you the trouble. There was no anger in Vanessa's voice. No impatience. She sounded genuinely helpful. And that was what made it difficult for Opal. If Vanessa had been rude, the answer would have been easy. But she was kind. She smiled. She brought food. She offered support. Yet somehow, Opal kept feeling like she was being moved through a plan that she never agreed to. That evening, Opal saw Vanessa outside near the driveway. Vanessa was speaking quietly. No, not yet. A pause. I told you, I am working on it. Another pause. I know what you need from me. But I can't push her any harder. Opal could not hear the rest. But Vanessa sounded different. Not caring. Not cheerful. Pressed. Later that afternoon, Opal walked through her home and noticed small changes. A few items in the kitchen had been rearranged. A cabinet that used to hold her things now contained some new containers Vanessa had brought. Nothing major. Nothing she could complain about. But it felt different. The house was still the same. Yet somehow, it was beginning to feel less like her own space. That evening, Daniel called his mother. He asked how she was doing. Opal hesitated before answering. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to ask. Did you know about all these changes? But she stopped herself. Because she did not want to create a problem between him and his wife. Instead, she simply said, Your wife has been helping me a lot lately. Daniel laughed softly. That's good, Mom. I think Vanessa is really trying to be there for you. Opal looked out the window. The garden outside was quiet. The same garden she had cared for with her husband for decades. I know, she replied. But even as she said the words, something inside her felt uncertain. Because Daniel believed Vanessa was helping. And maybe he truly believed that. Maybe he saw only the kindness. Maybe he did not notice the small details. The decisions. The assumptions. The way Vanessa spoke as if the future was already planned. The next morning, Vanessa arrived carrying several bags. She smiled brightly. I brought a few things that will make life easier around here. Opal looked at the bags. Then she looked at Vanessa. For the first time, she felt the need to ask a question she had been avoiding. Vanessa, can I ask you something? Her daughter-in-law turned around. Of course. Opal took a breath. Why does it feel like so many decisions about my life are being made before anyone asks me what I want? For a moment, the room became quiet. Vanessa's smile faded slightly. Only for a second. Then she gently placed the bags down. Mom, I think you're misunderstanding me. Opal wanted to believe that was true. She really did. But as Vanessa walked through the house, already deciding where things should go, Opal noticed something. The question was no longer whether Vanessa cared. The question was whether Vanessa understood the difference between caring for someone and taking control of their life. After that conversation, Opal Pierce started noticing something she had overlooked before. Vanessa always had a reason. A reason for the new ideas. A reason for the changes. A reason why everything needed to happen quickly. And every reason sounded reasonable. That was what made it so difficult. A few days later, Vanessa arrived at Opal's house carrying several boxes. Opal looked at them and smiled politely. What's all that? Vanessa placed the boxes near the kitchen counter. Just a few things that will make the house more comfortable. Opal looked closer. Inside were kitchen items, storage containers, and a few things she did not recognize. Vanessa, you didn't have to bring all of this. Her daughter-in-law smiled. I know. I wanted to. Then Vanessa started moving things around. A few containers went into the cabinets. A few items were placed on the shelves. She moved through the kitchen with confidence. Almost like she already knew where everything belonged. Opal watched quietly. She remembered when Vanessa first married Daniel. Back then, she had hoped they would become close. She never expected them to think exactly alike. She never expected them to be best friends. But she did hope they would always respect each other. That afternoon, Opal gently touched one of the boxes. Vanessa, I appreciate your help. But please ask me before changing things around. Vanessa stopped. For a moment, her expression changed. Not anger. More like surprise. Mom, I didn't realize it bothered you. Opal softened her voice. It's not about the things. It's about being included. Vanessa nodded. Of course. But the answer felt incomplete. Because even after saying that, Vanessa continued arranging things. Later that week, something else happened. Opal was sitting in the living room when Vanessa walked in with her grandchildren. The children ran happily through the house. Opal loved seeing them. Their laughter always filled the rooms with energy. But this time, something felt different. Vanessa carried a small bag and placed it near the hallway. Just some extra clothes for the kids. Opal looked at the bag. Are they staying tonight? Vanessa smiled. I thought it would be nice. They love spending time here. The child looked toward the hallway. Mom said I can pick which room I like. Opal froze. Pick. The child nodded. She said we would make it nice. Opal looked at Daniel. She expected him to say something. To explain. But he simply smiled. I think it's good for everyone, Mom. Everyone. That word stayed with Opal. Because she realized something. Decisions about her home were slowly becoming decisions made by other people. Nobody was being unkind. Nobody was raising their voice. Nobody was demanding anything. And maybe that was why it was harder to recognize. The boundaries were not being broken all at once. They were being moved little by little. A box here. A suggestion there. A new routine. A new plan. A new assumption. That evening, after everyone left, Opal walked through her quiet home. She stood in the kitchen and looked around. The same kitchen. The same walls. The same memories. But for the first time, she wondered if everyone else was beginning to see this house differently. Maybe they no longer saw it as the place where Opal lived. Maybe they were starting to see it as a place where their future could happen. And that thought unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. For the first time in many years, Opal Pierce began to feel like she needed to be careful inside her own home. That feeling bothered her more than anything else. Because this was the place where she had always felt safe. It was the place where she raised Daniel. The place where she shared quiet mornings with her husband. The place where she learned how to live independently after losing the person she loved most. Opal never expected her own family to make her question that comfort. But lately, every visit from Vanessa seemed to leave behind another change. Another decision. Another reminder that people were starting to plan around her instead of with her. One afternoon, Vanessa arrived while Opal was working in the garden. She smiled and walked toward her. "Mom, I have some exciting ideas." Opal placed her gardening gloves aside. "More ideas?" Vanessa laughed. "I know it sounds like a lot, but I think you will love them." She opened her phone and showed Opal pictures of different arrangements. A different way to use the outdoor space. A more convenient setup. A place where the grandchildren could spend more time. "It would be wonderful for everyone," Vanessa said. Opal looked at the pictures. She could see the effort. She could see that Vanessa had spent time thinking about it. But something was missing. Her opinion. "Vanessa," Opal said gently, "these are nice ideas. But did you ask me if I wanted to change the yard?" Vanessa paused. "I thought you would like it." Opal nodded slowly. "I understand that. But liking an idea and choosing it are different things." For a moment, Vanessa said nothing. Then she smiled. "You're right. I just want what is best for you." Those words should have made Opal feel better. Instead, they left her with another question. Who decided what was best for her? That evening, Daniel stopped by. Opal almost brought everything up. She wanted to ask him why Vanessa was making so many plans. She wanted to know if he was aware of all the changes. But when she saw how happy he looked, she hesitated. Daniel seemed relieved. He thought his wife was finally building a stronger connection with his mother. "Mom, I'm glad Vanessa is spending more time with you," he said. "She really cares." Opal looked at her son. She believed he meant every word. And somehow, that made things even harder. Because Daniel was not defending Vanessa because he did not care. He was defending her because he believed she was doing something good. Opal looked at her son. "Daniel, did Vanessa ever talk about changing the house?" Daniel smiled. "Changing the house?" "Yes." He paused. "No, Mom." "Why?" For the first time, Opal realized something. Daniel was not protecting Vanessa. He was simply unaware. That night, Opal sat by the window and thought about everything. Maybe she had been too cautious. Maybe Vanessa truly had good intentions. But then she remembered the phone call. The quiet voice. The words she could not forget. "I just need more time." More time for what? Opal still did not know. But she knew one thing. People did not usually ask for more time unless there was something they were trying to finish. And for the first time, Opal decided she would stop simply watching. She would start paying attention. Because if something was happening around her, she deserved to understand what it was. After that evening, Opal Pierce made a quiet decision. She would not accuse anyone. She would not start an argument. And she would not let fear guide her. But she would pay attention. For the first time, Opal stopped looking at each event separately. She started looking at the pattern. The next weekend, Vanessa arrived earlier than usual. She carried a small bag and smiled as she walked through the front door. "Mom, I brought a few things." Opal looked at the bag. "More things?" Vanessa laughed. "Just some items that will make life easier." She walked toward the kitchen. But before she opened the cabinet, Opal gently stopped her. "Vanessa." Her daughter-in-law turned around. "Yes? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Opal chose her words carefully. Have you been making plans for my house without talking to me first? Vanessa's eyes moved briefly toward the hallway. Just for a second. But Opal noticed. It was not the reaction of someone hearing a strange question. It was the reaction of someone afraid a secret had been discovered. For a moment, Vanessa looked surprised. Then she smiled. Mom, I think you are worried about nothing. Opal stayed calm. I hope I am. Vanessa placed the bag on the counter. I just see things that need to be done. I want to help. Opal nodded. I appreciate help. I really do. She looked around the kitchen. But help means standing beside someone. It does not mean deciding everything for them. The room became quiet. Vanessa looked away for a moment. Then she changed the subject. Speaking of making things easier, I was thinking about the spare room. Opal felt a small tension in her chest. The spare room? Yes, Vanessa said casually. The kids love being here. It might be nice to make it more comfortable for them. Opal looked toward the hallway. That room had always been special. It was where she kept old family photos. Where she stored memories from years gone by. It is still my room to decide what happens with, Opal said gently. Vanessa nodded. Of course. But the way she said it made Opal wonder if Vanessa truly understood. Later that afternoon, Daniel called. He sounded happy. Mom, Vanessa told me you two had a good talk. Opal smiled slightly. We talked. She really wants to make things better between you. Opal looked out the window. The garden was quiet. The same garden where she and her husband had spent so many peaceful mornings. Daniel, she asked softly, did Vanessa ever talk to you about all these changes? There was a short pause. What changes? That answer caught Opal's attention. Not because Daniel was hiding something. But because he genuinely did not seem to know. I don't know, Opal said. I just feel like things are moving very quickly. Daniel sighed. Mom, I think she is just trying to help. You know how Vanessa is. Once she decides something is good for someone, she puts her whole heart into it. Opal listened. And she believed him. Daniel was not defending Vanessa because he wanted to ignore her feelings. He was defending her because he saw a completely different picture. After the call ended, Opal sat quietly. She thought about Vanessa's kindness. She thought about Daniel's trust. She thought about the strange phone conversation she had overheard. Then another detail came back to her. Vanessa had never once asked. What do you want? She had only asked. How can we make this work? And that small difference suddenly felt much bigger than before. Because Opal was beginning to understand something. The question was no longer whether Vanessa cared. The question was whether Vanessa was making room for Opal's life. Or making plans to replace it. Opal Pierce had spent most of her life believing that actions mattered more than words. A person could say anything. They could promise anything. But what they did when nobody was watching usually revealed the truth. And lately, Opal felt like she was seeing small pieces of a picture she did not fully understand. One afternoon, Vanessa stopped by while Opal was sorting through old family photographs. The moment Vanessa walked in, she noticed the boxes on the table. What are you doing? Opal smiled. Just organizing some memories. Vanessa picked up one of the photos. You know, Mom, maybe it would be easier if we helped you sort through all of this. Opal looked up. We? Vanessa smiled. Daniel and I. We could help you decide what should stay, what should be stored, and what could be updated around the house. Opal gently took the photo back. I appreciate that, but I am not ready to let someone else decide those things. Vanessa tilted her head. Mom, I think you are making this more difficult than it needs to be. The words were soft. Almost caring. But they stayed with Opal. Because she had heard something similar before. Not the exact words. But the feeling behind them. The feeling that her choices were obstacles, That her independence was something other people needed to manage. Later that week, Vanessa brought the grandchildren over again. Opal loved every moment with them. She loved hearing their laughter. She loved watching them run through the yard. But this visit felt different. One of the children looked around the house and said something that made Opal pause. "Mom said we might have a room here someday." The child said it innocently. There was no intention to hurt anyone. But Opal looked toward Vanessa. Her daughter-in-law quickly smiled. "Oh, kids say things all the time." Opal smiled back. But inside, a question appeared. Why would a child say that if the idea had never been discussed? That evening, Opal sat alone in her living room. She looked around the house. The same walls. The same furniture. The same memories. But now she started noticing something. Vanessa was not simply visiting anymore. She was slowly creating a place for herself. A place that Opal had never offered. The next morning, Opal received another call from Vanessa. Her voice sounded cheerful. "Mom, I found some wonderful options for making the house more comfortable." Opal closed her eyes for a moment. "The house is already comfortable, Vanessa." There was a brief silence. Then Vanessa laughed lightly. "I know. I just mean there are ways to improve things." Opal looked at the window. She watched the sunlight fall across the garden. "Vanessa, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why do you keep planning changes for a home that belongs to me?" This time, Vanessa did not answer immediately. And that silence told Opal more than any words could. Finally, Vanessa said, "Because I am thinking about the future." Opal slowly placed the phone down after the conversation ended. The future. That word kept returning. Vanessa was always talking about the future. But Opal was beginning to wonder. And for the first time, Opal wondered if Vanessa had been preparing a future that did not include asking Opal what she wanted. After that conversation, Opal Pierce realized something important. She had spent weeks trying to decide whether she was being too sensitive. She kept giving Vanessa explanations. Maybe she was just trying to help. Maybe she was excited about spending more time together. Maybe Opal was simply having trouble accepting changes. But now, for the first time, Opal stopped asking herself if she was wrong. Instead, she started asking a different question. Why did Vanessa need everything to happen so quickly? That question stayed in her mind. A few days later, Opal noticed something unusual. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table, looking through her phone. When Opal walked in, Vanessa quickly turned the screen away. It was a small movement. Almost invisible. But Opal noticed. "What are you looking at?" Opal asked casually. Vanessa smiled. "Oh, just some ideas." "Ideas for what?" Vanessa placed the phone down. "For the future." Again. That word. The future. Opal sat across from her. "Vanessa, I have been thinking." Her daughter-in-law looked up. "About what?" "About all the changes you have been suggesting." Vanessa smiled gently. "I hope you know I only want what is best for you." Opal nodded. "I believe you think that." The answer surprised Vanessa. "What does that mean?" Opal took a moment before speaking. "It means I know you may have good intentions. But good intentions do not mean someone else gets to make every decision." Vanessa became quiet. For the first time, Opal saw a small crack in her confidence. Not anger. Not guilt. Something else. Concern. Then Vanessa quickly recovered. "Mom, I just worry about you being alone." Opal looked at her. "I have been alone before. I know how to live my life." The room became quiet. Because that was the truth Vanessa seemed to forget. Opal was not helpless. She was a woman who had built a home. Raised a family. Handled difficult years. She did not need someone to take over. She needed people to respect her choices. Later that evening, Opal called an old friend. She did not share every detail. She simply asked a question. Have you ever felt like someone was helping you so much that you started feeling like you were losing your own voice? Her friend was quiet for a moment. Then she answered. Sometimes people confuse helping with taking control. Those words stayed with Opal. Because they described exactly what she had been feeling. That night, Opal walked through her home slowly. She noticed things she had ignored before. The new items in the kitchen. The plans for the yard. The conversations about the rooms. The way Vanessa spoke about everyone, instead of asking what Opal wanted. Then Opal remembered the phone call. The one sentence she could not forget. I just need more time. Suddenly, it felt less like a random conversation. It felt like a piece of a larger plan. And for the first time, Opal wondered if the real question was not, why is Vanessa helping me? Maybe the real question was, what is Vanessa waiting to happen? Opal Pierce did not sleep well that night. Not because she was afraid. At 69 years old, she had already faced some of the hardest moments life could bring. She had said goodbye to the person she loved most. She had learned how to rebuild her days. She had learned how to stand on her own. But this felt different. This was not about losing something. It was about realizing someone might be trying to decide what she should lose. The next morning, Opal made a decision. She would stop guessing. She would find out. Not because she wanted to accuse Vanessa. Because she needed to understand what was happening inside her own home. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. She looked around the room. The small changes were everywhere now. The new items Vanessa had brought. The spaces Vanessa had started organizing. The plans Vanessa had already imagined. None of it seemed serious by itself. That was what bothered Opal. One small thing could be kindness. 10 small things could become a pattern. Around noon, Vanessa called. Her voice sounded cheerful. Mom, I wanted to check on you. Opal smiled politely. I'm doing fine. I'm glad. I was thinking we should talk about some arrangements. Opal looked down at her coffee. Arrangements? Yes. Just things to make the future easier. There it was again. The future. Opal took a slow breath. Vanessa, what future are you talking about? There was a short pause. Then Vanessa answered carefully. I just mean that families need to plan ahead. Opal listened. She noticed something. Vanessa never actually explained what she meant. She stayed in general words. Planning. Helping. Making things easier. But never the details. And that made Opal more curious. Later that day, Opal went through some old papers in her home office. Not because she expected to find anything wrong. She simply wanted to organize her own records. Her own life. Her own choices. As she looked through the documents, she remembered something her husband used to say. Always know what belongs to you. Not because you don't trust people. Because you respect yourself. At the time, Opal thought those words were just practical advice. Now they felt different. That evening, Daniel stopped by. He noticed his mother seemed quieter than usual. Mom, are you okay? Opal looked at her son. She wanted to ask him directly. She wanted to say, did you and Vanessa talk about my house? But she hesitated. Because she still loved him. And because she did not want to believe her own son could be part of something hurtful. Instead, she asked a smaller question. Daniel, when did Vanessa start making so many plans for me? He looked confused. I don't know. She just wants to help. Did she talk to you about moving things around? Changing rooms? Making decisions? Daniel shook his head. Not really. That answer stayed with Opal. Because if Daniel did not know, then who exactly was Vanessa making these plans with? After he left, Opal stood by the window. Outside, the evening light covered the garden. The same garden where she had spent years building memories. Then her phone rang. It was Vanessa. Opal answered. But this time, she listened more carefully. She heard the hesitation in Vanessa's voice. The urgency. The need to make something happen. Opal heard Vanessa say, I know. I know the situation is difficult. But I cannot promise anything until she agrees. And when the call ended, Opal sat quietly. For weeks, she had been asking herself whether Vanessa's actions came from love. Now, a new question appeared. A much more important one. If Vanessa truly cared about her. Why did it feel like Vanessa was waiting for something Opal had not agreed to? Opal Pierce spent the next few days doing something she had avoided for a long time. She stopped making excuses for other people. She did not stop loving her family. She did not stop hoping that Vanessa had good intentions. But she finally allowed herself to look at the situation honestly. Something was happening. And she needed to understand what it was. One afternoon, Opal decided to organize some old family documents. As she opened a drawer in her home office, she found years of memories. Old letters. Family photos. Notes from her husband. Everything reminded her of the life they had built together. But among those papers was something else. While organizing old documents, Opal found a note Vanessa had accidentally left behind. It was not a complete message. Just a few words. After she says yes. Opal stopped reading. Because she had heard those words before. Not exactly. But enough. The phone call. The careful planning. The way Vanessa spoke about the future. Everything started connecting. Opal realized that Vanessa had been waiting for her to agree to something. Something Opal had never been asked. That evening, Opal called someone she trusted. She did not share every detail. She simply explained that she wanted to make sure everything was organized and clear. The conversation gave her peace. Not because she expected a problem. But because she realized something important. Being prepared did not mean she was against her family. It meant she respected herself. The following weekend, Vanessa arrived again. This time, she seemed more hurried. She looked around the house while talking. The kids would really love this space, Vanessa said. Opal noticed the way she looked toward the rooms. Not like a guest. Like someone imagining possibilities. Vanessa, Opal said calmly. Her daughter-in-law turned. I need to be honest with you. Vanessa smiled. Of course. I appreciate your concern. I appreciate everything you have done. Opal paused. But I need you to understand something. This is my home. The smile on Vanessa's face became smaller. Mom, I know. No, Opal replied gently. I don't think you do. The room became quiet. I love having family here. I love spending time with the children. I love being close to everyone. But I also need my own space. My own decisions. My own life. Vanessa looked down. For a moment, she seemed like she wanted to say something. But she stopped. Then she simply said. I just thought I was helping. Opal nodded. I believe you thought that. That was the hardest part. Opal believed Vanessa was not waking up every morning thinking she wanted to hurt anyone. But good intentions could still cross boundaries. After Vanessa left, Opal sat alone in the living room. She looked around the house. For the first time, she felt certain about one thing. She was not imagining the changes. She was not being difficult. She was simply noticing that decisions about her life were slowly being made without her. Later that night, Opal's phone rang. It was Vanessa. She answered. At first, she heard only silence. Then Vanessa spoke quietly. Mom, I need you to trust me. Opal closed her eyes. Because that sentence felt heavier than it should have. Trust was important. Family was important. But trust did not mean giving someone permission to make choices on your behalf. And as Opal listened to the quiet hesitation in Vanessa's voice, she realized the answer she had been searching for might be closer than she thought. The question was no longer, "Is something happening?" The question was, "How long has Vanessa been planning it?" Opal Pierce had spent many years believing that love meant making sacrifices. She had sacrificed sleep when Daniel was young. She had sacrificed her own comfort to give her family more opportunities. She had spent decades putting the needs of others before her own. But now, standing inside the home she had built with her husband, Opal finally understood something important. Love did not mean disappearing. And being a mother did not mean giving up the right to make choices about her own life. After weeks of uncertainty, Opal decided it was time to have one honest conversation. Not an argument. Not a fight. Just the truth. When Daniel and Vanessa came over, Opal invited them to sit in the living room. The same room where so many family memories had been created. She looked at both of them before speaking. "I want you to know that I love you both." Daniel nodded. "We know that, Mom." Opal smiled softly. "Good. Because this is not about pushing anyone away." She looked at Vanessa. "But I need my home to remain my home." Vanessa was quiet. Opal continued. "I appreciate your help. I appreciate your concern. But I need you to ask me before making decisions about my life." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Daniel looked at his wife. And for the first time, he seemed to notice something he had missed before. Vanessa had always talked about what would be easier. What would be better? What would make sense? But she rarely talked about what Opal actually wanted. Daniel finally asked, "Vanessa, what exactly were you planning?" Silence. Then Vanessa admitted. She had been trying to create a solution for a family problem. She believed moving closer together would solve everything. But she never stopped to ask one question. "What does Opal want?" Daniel asked. "Why did you need Mom to agree?" Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Because I thought it was the only way to solve everything." Over the next few days, Daniel started asking questions. Not angry questions. Honest questions. He asked Vanessa why she had been making so many plans. Why she had been so focused on changing things around Opal's home. And slowly, pieces of the story began to come together. Vanessa admitted she had been under pressure. Someone in her family needed help. There were problems that she had been trying to solve. And instead of asking for support, she had convinced herself that she could fix everything by creating a new arrangement. She told herself it was for the family. She told herself everyone would eventually understand. But she had forgotten one important thing. A person's kindness does not give another person permission to control their choices. Before that conversation ended, Opal calmly explained that she had already organized her legal documents and made sure her wishes were clear. Not because she wanted to fight her family. Because she wanted her voice to remain part of her future. She did not raise her voice. She did not threaten anyone. She simply explained that she had spent her entire life building a home, and she would decide how that home would be used. For the first time, everyone understood. Opal was not asking for permission to keep her independence. She was reminding them that it had always belonged to her. Daniel apologized to his mother. Not because he had intended to hurt her. But because he realized he had been listening without truly seeing. Opal accepted the apology. But she also kept the boundaries she had created. The house remained hers. Her decisions remained hers. And her relationship with her family continued, but with more honesty and respect. Months later, Opal sat in her garden again. The same garden where she had spent so many peaceful mornings. Life was not perfect. Families were not perfect. People made mistakes. But sometimes, the strongest act of love is not giving more. Sometimes, it is teaching others how to respect what you have already given. And Opal learned that protecting herself did not mean she loved her family less. It meant she finally included herself in the family she had spent a lifetime caring for. A note for viewers *. This story is a fictional family drama created for entertainment purposes. The characters and events are imagined, and any similarities to real people or situations are purely coincidental. Now we would love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Opal's situation, if you were Opal, would you have confronted Vanessa earlier, or would you have waited until you knew the whole truth? Do you think Daniel should have noticed the changes sooner, or was it understandable that he trusted his wife? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may help someone else who is facing a difficult family situation.